For our first meeting, we're going to do this twice today. Demeter Beck-Taylor, Jennifer Moody, Frederick Cawthon, Eddie Chisholm, Emily Stutzman, Dale Grimes, Erica Dixie. All right, we have quorum. And first order of business is we need to elect a chair to host the meeting in lieu of our current board chair who is unable to be here today. So I believe Frederick, are you willing to be that board chair for today?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so then you would call for a vote, right?
I think we'd be okay just saying, is there any opposition?
So this is a vote to assign, elect, whatever you want to call it. Yep, elect the vice chair for the day. To
Just
speak.
chair, yeah.
Chair.
Yep.
Chair. All in favor by the sign of aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Any questions? All right, motion passed.
Okay, perfect. And that will be both for this board orientation as well as for the immediately following board meeting. So I'm going to run through really quickly. I appreciate y'all taking time to be here this a little bit early to go through our a little bit more about the board. So just to, going over the agenda, you all have your agenda in front of you. I'm going to do a quick presentation, and then Justin Marsh from Legal is going to do another presentation for you as well. So mine is just going over a little bit about the role of the Solid Waste Region Board. So counties were required as part of the Solid Waste Management Act in 1991 to form solid waste regions. Regions aren't necessarily always just one county, but most of them are. So Davidson County is the entire region for our solid waste region. And that board is required to put together a solid waste management plan. And they're supposed to be 10-year plans. To meet basically the state's plan for solid waste diversion. Some of you might have heard that the state is updating their current solid waste master plan. So that does mean that I believe it's supposed to be out. They're still taking some comments and getting some feedback for it. But once that is updated, there will have to be a review of our plan to make sure that it continues to fall in line with theirs. And then each year, the board, you all come together to approve that plan and that our annual report. And our current 10-year plan is the Achieving Zero Waste Master Plan. So board representation, the way the board is divided up, we technically have an 11-member board, but right now we've only got 7 folks, so we've got quite a few vacancies. But we have representation from all the satellite cities except for Forest Hills. Forest Hills, for some reason, didn't want to participate. And then there's also a Davidson County representative and kind of at-large Davidson County representatives. And the other bit of it is the state would like for us to have 2 elected officials. So Dale, you're one of those. And then we are looking at someone from Metro Council to join the board as well. That's possibly from the Solid Waste Subcommittee of Council. So these are the regions. You'll see that there's a few that have multi-counties within their region, but the majority of the state is single county solid waste regions. I will say that our annual meeting is required. We have to have that meeting every year, but it is recommended to meet more regularly. So we're looking at doing that last year. It did not happen. We've had a lot going on with our brand new department. But we'll probably be looking at doing at least quarterly meetings moving forward to make sure that everybody's just staying more up to date. So basically, the responsibilities of the Solid Waste Region Board and Solid Waste Planning, trying to remove as much stuff from landfill as we can, divert through reuse, composting, recycling. The state does list energy production on there as well. And then we are also required to divert household hazardous waste away from landfill. And as I mentioned, we have to maintain that, the board has to maintain the solid waste master plan and update it as needed. The updates are made through this annual progress report process that county staff, myself, Clay Hand, put together and work through. Yes, so then if you want to, the board, since the plan is driven by the board, you can change it at any time. We can make updates and fully revise it as there are new developments within the region. So our current plan was approved by this board in 2019, so we're already looking at a pretty old plan, and we'll be talking more about that in the meeting at 5 o'clock, but we are looking to make some potential updates, or would like to. So what does that plan include? These are the requirements of what has to go into the solid waste master plan. So it's a really robust, full evaluation of the county from demographics and waste streams, infrastructure, finances, et cetera. So quite a few things have to be looked at that have to be in this plan. Including municipal responsibilities as well. So that's not just Metro, but all of our satellite cities that are represented here. Facility permit review. So this is the big one. In addition to that annual progress report that you update and the plan, if there are any proposed new or expanding landfill proposals within Davidson County, it is the responsibility of the board to hear those expansion proposals and make a determination of whether or not that request fits with the current solid waste master plan. So you're not necessarily getting, while there's a lot of feelings around landfills, ultimately the board's decision has to be based on the plan that has been approved by the board. So if it's consistent or not consistent with that plan. It's got to have a public hearing, just like all of our board meetings are open public meetings. Now, when somebody does apply for it, we do have to respond within 90 days, or we have to respond within 30 days, and the whole process has to be done within 90 days. So it is somewhat of a quick turnaround time. I mean, I guess that's 3 months, but still. And then the state also will review that as well. In the plan, so our current zero waste master plan, our first initial goal is a high-performing 75% diversion. So these top 15 strategies are all ones that are listed in the plan that will help us get to that 75% diversion goal. So that's all of that's outlined in section 6 of the zero waste master plan. The ones that I've got starred up here are all ones that we're actively working on. So quite a few of those are things that are, things that we are working on. I know we've talked a lot in the past about construction demolition waste. That one in particular, we are looking to move forward on some legislation for construction and demolition diversion as well. So that's very exciting. All right, and then going beyond that, so what this plan does is that you've got those kind of core strategies that get us to 75%, but then it's going above and beyond to try and reach zero waste, which is what is defined as 90% diversion. So it's not, we recognize that not everything's going to have a solution, that there's still going to be some disposal needs, but the goal is to address as much as we possibly can through these strategies. So going above to get to that 90% is when we start looking, there's metro policies, public education, economic development, strategies that are all outlined in section 7. All right, and this is my last slide before I turn it over to Justin. So what gives you the authority, gives the board their authority is in Tennessee code. So these are the 3 kind of outlying, overarching, if you will, bits of TCA that, that kind of defines your roles. I will note the second one on here is the Jackson Law. So Jackson Law, you should be aware of what that means. In Davidson County, we have enacted the Jackson Law. So by state code, we're allowed to, Metro Council was allowed to make a vote. We have enacted the Jackson Law, which means that not only do you all have authority to approve plans for landfills and landfill expansions, but as long, anything that falls under the Jackson Law, so it would be anything after when the Jackson Law was enacted, which I can't remember the date, I should have written it down, would also have to go to Metro Council and be approved. And then, yeah, that's it. I'll switch over to Justin. And then, we should have time for a few questions.
So this is where, sorry, got young kids at home, so just trying to, this is where they send legal in to give the fun presentations. Give you the presentations on ethics for board members. So the goals of this training is to understand that you cannot accept benefits related to your role on the board, understand when you may be biased and have a conflict and should recuse yourself. Remember to disclose knowledge you've received about the agenda item from outside the meeting, and remember to articulate a specific reason and basis for your decision when you make a motion. And this also to help understand the Open Meetings Act prohibits deliberation outside of board meetings, and the Public Records Act makes almost all of your emails open to the public that pertain to your actions on the board. So for goal one, you have to understand that you cannot accept benefits related to your role on the board. So there's a Metro Code Chapter 2.222. It's the General Ethics Ordinance and provides all Metro employees, and this does include board members, shall not accept or solicit any benefit that might reasonably tend to influence them to act improperly in the discharge of their official duties, use Metro property, services, or funds for personal purposes, use non-public Metro information for personal gain, or for the gain of any family member or other employer. Additionally, you shall not use a Metro position improperly to secure unwarranted privileges or exemptions for themselves, relatives, or others. Accept other employment which might impair their independent judgment in the performance of their Metro duty. Accept any benefit which an employee should reasonably believe was intended to influence any action taken in the employee's official capacity. There are limited exceptions to these provisions, when something can be accepted. It's awards of trifling value publicly presented in recognition of service, gifts unrelated to the person's position as a Metro employee, in this case a Metro board member, meals, beverages, food, promotional items, or hand-produced items of a value of up to $25 from a single source in any calendar year, or free or discounted tickets, access to events or travel expenses from any single source of an aggregate value in any calendar year of up to $100, or tickets with a face value of in excess of $100 if they're done as part of a nonprofit organization's charity fundraising event. Metro Code 2.222.04 creates the Board of Ethical Conduct to hear complaints and render advisory opinions about the standards of conduct, or an executive order which regulates the ethical standards of conduct for employees of the Metropolitan government. Any elected official or member of a board or commission can request an advisory opinion from the board relating to compliance. Complaints regarding elected officials or board members of boards or commissions are made to the Board of Ethical Conduct. These are under their procedures. The Department of Law investigates, evaluates, and makes reports to the board regarding whether the facts, if proven true, would amount to an ethics violation. The board would then decide whether or not to hold a hearing based on that report. If a hearing is held, the parties are given an opportunity to present their case. The penalties for a violation of the Code of Ethical Conduct can be, the Board of Ethical Conduct can recommend to the council that the person be censured, recommend that the person resign his or her position, refer the matter to the District Attorney General for prosecution in the event of criminal matters, refer the matter to the Director of Law requesting civil action to be initiated for restitution or other relief. The Goal number 2 is to help you understand when you may be biased or have a conflict or should recuse yourself. As a board member, you have a duty of independence. This means that you cannot act based on your own self-interest, based on bias against or in favor of people you know personally, or based on the interests of the director or contractor with whom your board interacts. You must be impartial and act based on the law and the evidence presented to you. If you have a potential of conflict of interest, should you recuse yourself? Yes, if you are biased based on a personal interest. For example, if you were to gain or lose money directly from the decision. You are biased or prejudiced for or against a party, either as an individual or as a member of a group. For example, you're close friends or business partners with someone and cannot be objective. Or you cannot fairly or impartially weigh the evidence because you have prejudged the facts at issue. You do not need to recuse yourself if you will not gain or lose money fairly directly from the decision, and you can be objective and you do not believe in your participation will create the appearance of impropriety. In that case, disclose potential conflict, okay, sorry about that, but state that you believe you could be unbiased and will participate. If you are uncertain, please consult with staff and or Metro Legal, because your participation in the decision may be grounds for challenge upon appeal. We'd always prefer that if you have a question, you just come and ask. Goal 3 is remember to disclose knowledge you have received about an agenda item from outside the meeting, if you have received any knowledge from outside the meeting. So your options are to disclose your knowledge from outside the meeting or recuse. Knowledge can include attempts to lobby you outside the meeting. And knowledge can include your expertise or experience with this type of issue or an area of town when making a decision. Now, when you're making a motion, remember to articulate specific reasons and basis for your decision. Acceptable reasons, and this is because if the board's action were to be challenged, the board speaks through its motions. So if you are clear in the motion on the grounds for which you're making your decision, it helps everyone to look at that decision later and determine why that decision was made. Acceptable reasons include criteria in the relevant guidelines or law, and applying those criteria to the facts presented at the meeting, past specific experience with similar issues, or studies by experts or firsthand observations or experience of the public. Unacceptable reasons as a basis for your decision would be sympathy for the applicant or for people who are opposed to the approval, opposition that is not based on relevant guidelines or law. For instance, the project may be noisy and we already have too much traffic. And then number 5 is understanding the Open Meetings Act. Board members should absolutely avoid the use of email to discuss board issues or invite comments from other members concerning any public issues. It does not matter whether the email is a Metro email address or private email address. And violations of the Open Meetings Act make decisions based upon those deliberations void. The judge may also order court supervision of the board. When you have a duty to vote, it is the duty of every board member or commission member who has an opinion on a question to express it by his or her vote. Tennessee law disfavors abstentions. It's because abstentions are essentially a vote for the prevailing side, but they are purposely kept out of the public record. A board member who abstains because they do not believe the law is correct is in a sense legislating. That's not the role of this board or commission, and that is the role of the legislative body. Abstaining to let the courts decide is also impermissible because it defeats the purpose of having an administrative body make an initial review. It's part of what is a meeting in terms of the public meetings, Tennessee Open Meetings Act. A meeting is when 2 or more members of a governing body with the authority to make decisions or make recommendations to a public body meet and make a decision or deliberate towards a decision. Adequate public notice must be given before a meeting. Notice informs the affected parties of their opportunity to be heard and gives them time to prepare and anticipate the meeting. Tennessee courts have determined that adequate public notice is sufficient notice under the circumstances that would fairly inform the public of the meeting. Now, I, along with your staff, will help make sure there's public notice for these meetings. So hopefully that is not something that you guys need to worry about too much. What is not a meeting? The following are not considered a meeting, as long as there is no decision or deliberation towards a decision. An on-site inspection of a property, a chance meeting or informal assemblage, if you run into each other at the grocery store, that's not a public meeting. Attorney-client privilege executive sessions. That's when legal would speak to the board concerning a matter of litigation. Understanding the best practices for making an informed decision. Best practice for your staff are to provide a detailed agenda for each meeting, ideally at least a week ahead of the meeting, so that the public may be informed of issues to be decided or deliberated, and the board may review relevant documents or contracts in preparation for the meeting. We'd also recommend providing a staff report or recommendation for each agenda item in written or oral form with the reasoning behind this recommendation. And start each meeting with a decision or declaration by any board members of conflicts or recusal for any agenda items. Make sure you understand the work of your department, and the staffing of your board. For example, meet with the leadership, ask for tours, review key organizational documents, contracts, and understand the board's legal role, and the history of the past decisions. Before each meeting, review agenda items and copies of the relevant documents or contracts that you will need to make an informed decision. Ask questions about anything you don't understand. Note any conflicts that should be disclosed or warrant recusal. We'd also recommend considering just adopting some metrics to make sure everything's moving in a timely fashion. That's what we got. That's all I got. Any questions?
Okay, that was, I know that was really quick, but I wanted to at least get a little bit of some orientation in for our new folks. We've got a lot of new faces on the board these days, so we will go ahead and we got a couple minutes before the board meeting starts, and we are waiting on a couple more board members, so hi. So we'll get started here shortly.
Wait, Jen, this is Dale. Are these materials that y'all have just been showing, are they in this notebook here somewhere, or can you provide them?
I can provide them. I'll send them all to you via email.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, great, thank you.
First order of business, our chair is unfortunately not able to join us today, so we are going to elect a sitting chair for this meeting. So Frederick has offered to do that. I will turn it over to you.
All right, based on the motion, is there any opposition? Hearing none, we will proceed.
Okay. All right, we'll do a roll call. Demita Beck-Taylor. Erica Dixie.
Present.
Dale Grimes. John Harvey. Oh, this is an old list. Silly me. My apologies. Frederick Cawthon.
Here.
Jennifer Moody.
Here.
Eddie Chisholm.
Here.
Emily Stutzman.
Here.
All right. We have quorum.
All right, I'll let you keep it so we can introduce.
Yes,
do some
okay.
introductions.
So we've got quite a few new people, so we're just going to go around and do some quick introductions. We'll just go down like so. So most of you know me at this point, but I'm Jen Harmon. I'm with the Department of Waste Services for Nashville and have been serving as staff support to the board.
I'm Tracy Thurman, and I am the Director of Waste Services for the City of Nashville.
Clay Hand, I'm engineer with the City of Nashville Waste Services.
Justin Marsh, Metro Department of Law.
Matt Purvis, I'm the council liaison for the department.
Emily Stutzman, board member.
Frederick Cawthon, board member.
Erica Dixie, board member.
Jennifer Moody, board member.
Eddie Chisholm, board member.
Dale Grimes, board member.
All right, Frederick, I'll turn it back over to you for the minutes.
All right, request a motion to approve the April 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
All right, we got a second. All right, next, can we get a confirmation on the vote by sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any nays? All right, ayes have it. The motion has approved for the April 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes. Oh,
That was the old date.
oh, you did. Yeah. 2025, I thought that would have been March 25th, correction, March 25th, 2025.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you for that. Next up is a motion to approve the 2024 or 2025 annual report.
25.
We're
Oh, is
going to
that
go
correct?
through the presentation first, and
Okay,
then we'll move
gotcha.
into it.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. All right, our agenda. Okay, so this is going to be in the same order as your report that you have in front of you as well, the full report. So starting with county and municipal public recycling and diversion. So this year we saw a 2.75% increase in recycling collected from Davidson County, from Metro programs as well as satellite city programs for recycling. So that's very exciting. The 5 categories here are kind of the buckets that have the most volume of material. Or I guess tonnage of material. So you'll see there's single stream recycling, that did go down a little tick. But then wood, biosolids, which is from Metro Water Services, from their processes, and then cardboard and glass. So a lot more wood this past year. County infrastructure, so this will be the the next section of your report, goes through and We've got all of our convenience centers, both Metro and for City of Goodlettsville, all of the drop-off locations for recycling that we have. And you can see a little map there that shows all of our infrastructure. Going into the obstacles, so we've got staff, markets, funding, education, citizen apathy, and other. We've listed as infrastructure. These are all checkboxes within the report. So those are our buckets that are provided by the state that we select. So infrastructure in particular has investment rather, has been pretty minimal still in the past. So that's made it difficult to recycle more materials. We have been limited by our contractors, but that's going to change, which is very exciting. Limited local markets as well. If there's nowhere for the material to go, then we can't recycle it. We've got to have that full circular loop for these materials. Additionally, we have, for Metro, our staff has grown substantially since last year. We've hired 74 people over the past year. We had added 30 new positions, and so that's been really exciting. Our next step, though, there's quite opportunity for compliance and enforcement of Metro code that would allow us to capture more funding from permit fees and from generator fees. So that is where staffing is really a critical component moving forward. Recycling information, as you all know, continues to be often confusing. There is some differences between different programs, both locally as well as regionally. We have people moving here from all over the place that had different recycling rules. So that always continues to be a challenge. And then from our satellite cities, so that's from Metro. So there was some note of not having publicly owned property to expand. Again, more of the public education and markets. So on the same page with our satellite cities. Composting section, so that does include the biosolids material that comes from Metro Water Services. It includes yard trimmings as well as post-consumer food and produce. Again, all those checkboxes are ones that are listed by the state. And then Metro does provide assistance for backyard composting. We've given away quite a few bins, over 100 little countertop bins, done 37 giveaways for our Earth Machine compost bins, as well as we have those for sale. So we've had a lot of those that have been purchased. For composting alone, we've had 24 specific events and 749 attendees in 2025. So a lot of outreach going on there, as well as online. We do have our Dirt on Composting webinar that you can just readily watch on demand. So that continues to get views as well. Nice in 2025 that we did not have any disasters to report. As you all know, our numbers are probably going to go significantly up with the ice storm for next year. So you're not going to see that reflected in the 2025 plan, but it will be in the 2026 annual progress report. Highlighting some of our education efforts. So we have had, in terms of both recycling and composting events, we've had 60 events with over 3,000 participants or attendees. Our Nashville Waste and Recycling app has continued to grow and reach more and more residents. So the schedule views refer to the calendar. So 1.3 million schedule views, 1.7 million views of different materials where you can actually search in the app, look up where do I take a mattress, and it'll tell you where to recycle it. As well as there is a really fun game if you haven't played it, but it's a great way to test your knowledge, and it is specific to Nashville. So that's a really great educational tool, and that's getting close to 3,000 gameplays. Sustainable in the City podcast. We are no longer doing the podcast, but it is still out there for people to listen, and we still continue to get downloads. So we have 12 different episodes. 994 downloads in 2025 and over 2,000 all time. So that's still getting good reach. We've also had some creative collaborations. We got to hang out with T-RAC one day to do some recycling education videos. One of them was for our recent reroute of new collection pickup days. And then we've got another one that we'll be able to post about recycling right with T-RAC coming up in the future. The Metro Nashville Public Schools composting pilot did end last school year. So we were only 6 months worth of that within the calendar year 2025. But we had 11 schools and over 102,000 pounds of food waste that we were able to collect from those schools, which is in 1 year, which is pretty incredible. And that came with education to all of those students. Community recycling days, this is something that we've been doing that's a little bit newer. Back when we were with Metro Public Works, we were part of Metro Beautification. Since we've split off from, and the Nashville Department of Transportation was established, we had not been supporting those events, but now we are. These bulk kind of cleanup day events. So that's been really exciting. It's been really positive, and we've been able to divert a lot more material, whereas before it was just, most of it was just going to landfill. So that is really exciting. We've held 3 events. We've got 2 more this weekend, and others continuing to plan. Our social media was launched, we've been pretty proud of this. It was launched July 1, 2025. So right when we got our new department was established. So we've got, you can see on the Instagram and the Facebook that we've got quite a few followers, 525 followers for Instagram, 367 for Facebook. But that is continuing to grow and has been a great outlet for us to get outreach out there. From our satellite cities, education is going out through newsletters, through websites, and Forest Hills also has a clean out day that they do, I think twice a year. All right, our funding and for programs and contracts. So this is just a quick rundown of everybody's finances, but ultimately, I think the takeaway from this is that for Metro in particular, 56% of our budget is going towards collection of material and contractors that provide our collection services. I'm not going to go through all of these super in detail, but I'll pull out some highlights. So the first one, this is a questionnaire that the state provides for us, usually the same questions every year. The first question is, this is pretty similar to what you've seen from years past, the HB 1021 that restricts us from regulating packaging. And then 68-101 109 is a required labeling of plastic containers. That is that little chasing arrows symbol that can be very confusing when residents see that because it doesn't necessarily indicate recyclability. And then also the new one that we've added is the state limits us in terms of fines of $50 a day per offense, which is pretty low if we're trying to do some real enforcement, but there is money absolutely there even with that $50. A lot of this is talking about supporting growing infrastructure, needing our infrastructure investment. That's in pretty much every single one of these next ones. The 2 in blue, we've got some slides for all those, so I'll walk through those. So grant funding. Really, really excited that we were awarded $2.4 million from the EPA. We were one of 17 awardees for the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling grant of over 350 applicants. So really, really exciting. That's going to be able to help us start building our own scalable materials recovery facility, so that it'll be publicly owned, and hopefully be able to increase what we can recycle and market. So that's really super exciting. We also got a donation of, now this is not live yet. It will be soon, but we got a donation of a foam densifier. It's called Foam Cycle. You can see the picture there of what it looks like. This is going to be set up at our East Convenience Center, and we're going to be able to, people can drop off styrofoam and other foam packaging, and we're going to be able to densify it and recycle it. So super exciting. That was also grant funded. Our operational investment, this has been huge this year. So we just underwent a full reroute of all of our trash and recycling routes across the county and our curbside service. It was about 8 months, 3 years worth of work built into about 8 months, and this hadn't been done in over a decade. So our old map, so that quad map that you see, it's so nice and clean. Imagine that like scattershot all over the place is what it was like before. So we went from a 5-day week to a 4-day week. We've built in some that Monday to be able to do fleet maintenance and training and really kind of reframe and rebuild how we do our collections. So it was a big, that technically happened in 2026, but the lead up to it was definitely 2025. We've also have gotten a lot more technology implemented. So before we were using paper maps, we now actually use routing software that is an incredible tool for our drivers, as well as our dispatch team, to be able to ensure on-time service delivery. We also have introduced Zonar. It's a specialized technology for required DOT pre and post trip inspections of vehicles every single day. So before they're going out of the lot and when they get back, before they can leave, doing those inspections. And that's huge for the safety of our drivers. Dispatch is something we also created. We didn't have a dispatch team, so they're really the connection between our drivers and Hub Nashville and customer service. So that allows when a miss comes in, they're allowed to get that, or able to get that directly out to the drivers that are out in the field. We have walkie-talkies. I know that seems crazy that we didn't have walkie-talkies before, but we didn't. So really coming, creating some strong new teams to help improve our service delivery. The food scraps pickup pilot is continuing to go on. It's still continues to be one of our successes. So it started October 23, 2023. We've been, for this past calendar year, we have paid for it out of our own expenses, I think for the entire calendar year. So we've been able to absorb it operationally for that 750 participating households. We are looking at, we've engaged a contractor for a feasibility study to see where do we take this next. But you can see we've over 474,000 pounds of material has been collected in that time. And it's very low on contamination rate. People understand it a lot more than they understand recycling, which has been really exciting. And the set out rate is that 81.38%, that's how often they're setting their bins out every week, is comparable to people that pay for the service as well that are not part of our pilot. So really pleased with the results. And that's 6.6 pounds of food scraps that people are per household per week. So that's a lot. Also, this was, we were named the Government Recycler of the Year from the Tennessee Recycling Coalition in 2024. So wanted to give a shout out to that as well. Also, we've been helping other departments in establishing some recycling programs. We've been working with the Nashville Public Library. I've got 4 pilot locations. If you've ever been to a Nashville Public Library, you've probably seen how many of those receipts they have. It's a lot. They do not contain BPA or any other harmful chemicals, so they're able to recycle those. So there is, the folks and the staff there are thrilled about it. And we're looking to figure out how can we expand this to some of the other locations. So one of them is on our curbside route, so it's North Branch is serviced by Metro. The other ones are serviced by Republic. And the cost was financially feasible for them to absorb that for the Republic locations. Unfortunately, because of the way Republic's trucks work, we're not able to get tonnage information. But we have had a couple of trainings, and they are actively recycling, which is great. E-Center, so this was one of our major projects that we had in 2025. It was a huge lift to improve. If you haven't been over to our East Convenience Center, it's essentially our flagship convenience center, and it now looks like a flagship convenience center. It needed desperate updates for safety. We put in a new booth. You can see that old booth was very small, didn't have a restroom, so now we've got a new booth. It's more secure. It's got a restroom in it. We also completely repaved everything, put new concrete pad down for the dumpsters and extended those concrete pads to ensure the longevity of the parking surfaces. We did striping, railings, so you can kind of see some of those before and afters. It looks a lot better. It's also got all updated new signage. That's something that we're working on for the other centers as well. Is getting those outfitted with new signage. We did have a ribbon cutting, and Councilmember Sean Parker, who is the council member for the district where East Center is at, came and spoke, as did Kendra Abkowitz, who is the Deputy Chief of Operations with the Mayor's Office as well, and over sustainability. So just really exciting to have this kind of redone and have that support. Some of our growth, so like I said earlier, 30 positions, hired 74 people. Mayor O'Connell came and visited us for Thanksgiving to give his thanks for the accomplishments and the work that our staff have been doing. I mean, they've really gone from 0 to 60 over the past year, very much because of our leadership. So collection staff, so we're at 155 total staff positions, and we're rolling out every day at 6 a.m. So we are also, I alluded to this in the previously in the quick orientation that we had, but we are undergoing a waste characterization study. So that solid waste master plan's characterization study was done in 2017. So that now is old information, old data. So we are getting a whole new set of data from a 4-season study. We've completed 3 seasons, and we've got 1 left to go. So you can see there's some of the fun work that that entails. It does entail going to, we've been working at 4 different locations, a C&D facility that's owned by Waste Connections. We've been going to the Republic Transfer Station, the Waste Management Transfer Station, and Waste Management's Materials Recovery Facility to sort through material. So you can see that picture on the right. It's sorting by hand household trash. So it's not a fun thing to do, but it is really critical for us to have that data to be able to inform decision-making moving forward. Oh, and that will also, before I switch to the next one, that will also be able to inform updates to our solid waste master plan as well. Okay, so the grant questionnaire, it just asks, again, these are like check boxes that they have, and asks what we'd like to see. As I've mentioned, infrastructure is really big. We need the infrastructure to be able to divert more material. So these are just, the images here are just examples of, the first one, the blue, is a materials recovery facility that is, it's got redundancies, it's got all kinds of unique equipment. Our current MRF, what we called a MRF, the materials recovery facility, it is WM's oldest. that they have across, I guess they're in 2 countries. So across North America, it's their oldest facility. And there's been minimal investment. We have 1 optical sorter. Other places will have robotics, optical sorters, augers that keep plastic bags from tangling. Lots of really updated technology out there that can help us sort and recycle more material. So funding for that. And then the other picture is a glass crusher. We can't currently accept glass curbside because they don't have a glass crusher system and cleaning system to get it out of the stream. The tire report, just tires. We've got lots of tires. It is part of a state mandated program. It was with Waste Services up until July 1, 2025, and then it has since moved to NDOT. So they now manage the tire recycling program. Yep. And then our private recycling report. So this, in your book, there's, in your report folder, there's a bunch of individual reports from each of the companies that we reach out to. This is a roll-up of all of those. So you can see we've also increased in our recycling 1.11% on the private side. I will also note, though, this is not all encompassing. There is some data that the state gets that they don't give to us, and there's other, there's a lot more folks that may not be represented on this list. So that's something we're working on for the future to make that more robust. Landfilling, very excited to see. So one thing that we found out through our contractor that's doing our waste characterization study is that a significant portion of our out-of-state material was listed or has been listed in the past as municipal solid waste, but it's actually construction and demolition material. So it's been counting against us towards our diversion because construction and demolition material, when landfilled appropriately in those class 3-4 landfills, or going to a location out of state that is for C&D is considered diversion from an MSW landfill. That is what the state, their requirement is, a diversion from MSW, municipal solid waste landfills. So you're gonna see this represented. I updated our numbers from last year as well as for this year. But overall, you can see for MSW landfills that we have decreased by 5.68%, which is exciting. And then for our construction and demolition, the state gives us these numbers and they did not necessarily have all of them in yet. But what preliminarily we are seeing is 16.78% of a decrease in C&D landfill as well. But you can see that out of state category, that 303,000, and last year 375,000, that's all that C&D that was being counted as municipal solid waste. Okay, so that's the presentation and we'll open it up for questions.
Jen, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the last slide that you had up there, I don't believe that information about the landfill is actually in the annual report that we received ahead of the meeting. Was it in there somewhere?
I had not received the landfill data at the time that I sent the stuff in advance, so that one was not in there. I do apologize.
Okay, I mean, I think that's really important information as we're trying to see how we're doing in going towards zero waste. And I can't interpret the graphs and the numbers all here very quickly, but it seemed to me that we're, looks like we're at landfills, C&D landfills. Now, what about the slide before that? Can you go to that one? C&D is way up, and we sort of know why that is from previous discussions. But the total for municipal solid waste has gone down 80,000 maybe. Again, I can't do the math very quickly, but 80, 100,000, 120,000. Whatever, it's close to that. How do you, so that's you're considering that a 5.68 decrease in the landfill. that's good. What does it take to get to zero? Some of the numbers, some of the information you had on here was the recycling had increased by 2% or by 3% or by 1.11%. And that doesn't sound like, I'm not criticizing, I'm not saying, I'm just trying to think in measurement terms, how are we doing? And is the main obstacle here the infrastructure and the funding for that? Is that why, could we do better if we had that?
I think I'll take that question. So to answer your question, again, one of the reasons I think we started with the waste audit is all waste is local. And so if you start thinking about it like a science experiment and look at it, it all starts with trash. And so everything outside of that, it's just tools in your toolbox. So recycling is one piece, composting is one piece. You're doing everything in your power to divert from the landfill to, in that space. And so I think that one, we hadn't had a waste audit in some time. And so us going through this 4-season pool is pretty significant. It's a significant investment, but I felt like it was something that we needed to do on our end to see where we were and what we were seeing in the waste stream. And so, I was kind of hoping we would have some of that results before this meeting, so we could have shared that. Now, as soon as we could get that formulated, I would love to share that with you guys, because there's been different things that are coming out of it. I think that, some of the earlier polls, there's a lot of existing infrastructure that obviously we could handle if there were more education effort into that, and investment in that sector. So that's one piece of it. I know that foam, we were doing the little foam pilot project. Foam continues to be one of those things. So when you're thinking about it's the packaging things, that we're going into and where we order from Amazon and all these different companies. So you're trying to figure out those pieces as well. And I think even, as an industry across the country, film, when you get into all the packaging, that you're doing, snack packaging and things like that, those continue to be challenging, so that's where, I think, again, just like we're doing the pilot in the foam space, I think that's where sometimes government becomes an incubator to try those things out in that space. But certainly we've seen a lot of cardboard, which we shouldn't be seeing in our waste stream. We've seen that every single time. There's clothing that continues to be a huge piece and component. So we make a really strong center for, that kind of fabric recycling in that kind of space as well. So we're kind of looking at all those tools in the toolbox to divert. The C&D, that's the construction demolition debris. Now, the state counts that as recycling if those are going to that class landfill, so that it is taking it from the municipal landfill and putting it in the proper place. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to kind of revisit, in Nashville in particular, because we had some C&D legislation that we had in the past that predated me. That'll be coming up again. We have other folks that are in that, so you usually have to have an end game. And so in that space, there's at least two potentials for, being able to divert that material to those locations, and they're permitted for that, that effort. So that's another piece in the toolbox, again, is addressing C&D in that space. Recycling in general tends to be challenging. One, because in Nashville, we're at every other week, but I think, it goes back to just because it has a label doesn't mean that it's recyclable. And that's across the country as well. And so that's where the confusion, I think, comes for everybody. And so it's all about, what your local facility can process. And so ours has been pretty much limited to bottles and jugs, for a long time. And so we're looking at ways that we can kind of beef that up and expand that. We were able to get the $2.4 million in the Swiffer grant from the EPA, and that's really to do a scalable MRF. That may be a place that, eventually we can pull together in that area, where we're not being, where it's not a for-profit kind of situation where you're relying on a company in that space. I know that right now, we recently had a price hike in ours, and so now ours is $150 a ton processing. Industry average in that space for processing recyclables is between 85 and 95. Now, we have our bid out right now on the street for processing recyclables. So again, and composting is one of those things that it can't be underscored. We've made significant gains just from that pilot. We're now trying to look to see how we could scale that and expand that out to the entire community. Whether it be, an opt-in kind of situation where you have an app and you have like locations where you can drop where it could track that. But those are all the pieces that go into trying to divert from the landfill. I will say that our contract ends in January of 2027. And so we'll be soon having a bid out, probably here in the next few weeks, that we will eventually get that through procurement and get that out for bid. So we'll be interested to see, what happens in that space as well. But those are just some of the things. I don't know if that answers your total question, but that is the fluctuation in the numbers. I feel like in our space, what I have figured out just in my time frame, one, we reset the quad, just the collection piece, but that was just to rip the Band-Aid off and set down, get a better collection system in place because, again, it hadn't been updated in like a decade. And usually those are things that you update within a year just based on infill and development. So we've at least got succinct quads in that space. But, there's a lot of pieces missing when it comes back to compliance and, should we be in this space or not in that space? So we're kind of going through that. Generator fees, who should be paying into, those fees. A lot of folks will go to the transfer station and say it's not Nashville's waste or it's this or that. So there needs to be some more tightening in the compliance space on that end. And so that's a space that in this year's budget that I've asked for additional positions and I'm going after that space to try to get some more compliance. That's where we see that. Again, whether it's the truck that should be permitted, it kind of gets at all of us in Davidson County. You see this truck and it doesn't have a permit on it and it's not screened and it's got litter going out the back and you're trying to figure out who do you call and how do you deal with it. That's one of the places, again, if you've got them properly permitted, think like a building permit. And so, that's one of the places that I feel like that we have a responsibility is to properly permit in that space. But that would also be a collection point as well, and that would help identify those folks at the transfer stations, which would get back to accurate numbers in the reportables.
Well, thank you. That was a lot. But I appreciate knowing all that or hearing all that. I did have one other question, and it had to do, I think it has to do with what you just said in part, but the citation to the Tennessee Code 68-101-109 about labeling, and there was another one about plastic bags. I'm not familiar with those laws.
So there's one, the HB 1021, thank you, is a legislation that restricts a local municipality's ability to put any regulation on any kind of packaging. So it means that if we wanted to put a deposit, add a deposit for single-use plastic bags or ban single-use plastic bags or ban styrofoam, those kinds of things. It's kind of commonly referred to as a ban on bans, and there's a lot of them throughout the Southeast. So unfortunately, we're not able to do anything, even downtown, where I know we had looked at addressing all the glass that's coming out of downtown, and that particular law makes that difficult as well. Then the other piece of legislation, remind me what the other one was?
It was one about labeling.
Oh, the labeling. So this state law that requires all plastic packaging that's being like sold or shipped through the state has to, if it's plastic, it has to have that 1 through 7 with the chasing arrows on it. But as Director Thurman said, that doesn't necessarily denote recyclability of those materials. Bottles, jars, and jugs is what we said for a long time now, and that's pretty much it. So those are only 1s and 2s, but not even all 1s and 2s are being recycled at our facility. So that is just really difficult and confusing for the consumer, because they see that little chasing arrow symbol that was designed specifically to make people think it was recyclable, and it's just not.
and on clear, plastic, you put your eyes out trying to find that number too. So you've really accomplished something when you find the number, you really want to recycle it.
Yeah, that's why we really focus on the shape. It's much easier for consumers to think bottles, jars, and jugs, and that's it. Yep.
Do we have any other questions?
I do have a question. You want, okay. My question is still on the commodities. It's always interesting to me to just know what maybe commodities are the most valuable or marketable. And with you having hopefully a new MRF coming online, I don't know what the arrangement was before, if you were benefiting from selling the commodities, or did you have an arrangement with Waste Management where they were operating that facility, or they are operating
So
it?
you get to an excellent point. So typically in those contracts, you've got a processing fee, which we pay a processing fee. And so that's what I was saying, is that our processing fee went to $150
It's high,
a ton, which
yeah.
is very high. And so when they do sell, we have a 70% share.
Okay.
But when they sell, by the time you calculate that kind of processing, then our value goes down to nothing. Because it just wipes that out. So we've been paying for quite some time in that space.
So the new facility, you'll be operating yourselves, is that what you're saying?
Well,
Or you'll be looking for an operator?
So we are looking at someone in this next bid cycle, which we've got out now, to have someone process and, be able to sell as commodities. And we're looking at what their philosophy is. And we're trying to identify partners in that space, because again, there's a lot of folks that are very interested in recycling within Davidson County, and it's like, okay, so what is it that they're willing to take and, be a partner in helping explore those opportunities in that space, so that we're not just limited in what we can do. So, and then the other part of that is we did get the Swiffer grant, so we're kind of looking at that like as a two-prong, because that's a different piece outside of the current bid that we have. But we have that as kind of a scalable MRF, because it covered the cost of a baler, conveyance equipment, AI technology, that kind of thing. So that gets to a good point. But you would like to see a space where you kind of move away from something that's more profit-driven on that side, where you're beholden to that in a way, versus, where we can kind of all share and get lifted in the process and, get to some kind of situation like that long-term.
Where I was going with that thought is that I know cardboard is one of the materials that has always been very marketable, as long as it's clean, right? And, but I thought it was interesting that just what you said, our experience in Belmead has been exactly what you said. There's still too much cardboard that's being thrown away instead of recycled. When we have, we're very fortunate in Belmead. We pick up cardboard at the back door, as well as having two cardboard dumpsters at City Hall where it can be disposed of. And I promise you, I was one of the ones that said if we had more publicly available space, we would put more dumpsters, because I think as many as I put out, we could fill up. And I think everyone is having so many products delivered. And those, I know there's some sites encourage you to combine your deliveries, so there's less packaging, but for the most part, I usually just personally get packages that are in an oversized box for whatever it is. So I do wish there were ways we could just encourage somehow retailers to be thinking about the packaging that they're doing, but also make it easier for our citizens to recycle those things that are more marketable, that help bolster up the recycling program. And it is strange to see how cardboard went down, because I just think there's more and more cardboard all the time. So how are we not increasing what we're recycling there? It makes me wonder, is there some impediment that we're not aware of? I feel like we're only limited in Belmead because the vendor will only pick up 10 boxes at the home. And then I think we're really at the maximum of what we can do as far as pickups or emptying of the dumpsters at our city hall. We already have 3-day-a-week service, and they can't always get there on time for the schedule we have. So adding another day of emptying probably wouldn't work for us. But if there's any way to, if there's ever any way on any of these commodities that we can further encourage our residents or make them aware of programs, I'd be happy to do that. I think composting was one you mentioned, that's not a program that I think satellite cities can take advantage of yet. But you mentioned some customers are paying for, outside of the pilot, there's an opportunity to pay to participate. So if that's available to satellite cities, let me know, and that might be something that our residents are interested in.
Yeah, so the service that we use for our residential pilot program is with Compost Nashville. So Compost Nashville, Compost Company, and another company called Regenerate all provide composting services. Compost Nashville is more residential, and so is Regenerate, and Compost Company does more commercial, but you can utilize any one of those services to get composting at home. And then our drop-offs, our board drop-off locations are for any resident in the county. So even the satellite city folks can come and utilize those centers.
Okay, that's great to know.
And that's at no charge as well for food scraps. And, yeah, and cardboard too. Use any of our drop-off sites for cardboard, but you're absolutely right. I mean, we fill up our cardboard dumpsters so fast.
Yeah, and I just wanted, last comment is congratulate you on the work you've done on the grants. It's phenomenal. It's exciting to see how your department is thriving and growing, and appreciate all the hard work. It's a good report.
So good evening. And I have several questions, so I can just do a couple and then give someone else a turn. So going back to the screen, going back to the slide of the C&D landfill with the Southern Services. Is that the Southern Services, which is on off of Ashland City Highway, Bradley Parkway, is it approaching capacity?
It's not, I actually don't know what their current capacity is, because it is privately owned. I will say that they did install, it's owned by Waste Management, WM. They did install a recycling facility there. So they are getting less material. You can see a little bit of a downtick between 2024 and 2025. They are able, they say they are able to recycle 60% of the material that they're getting at that location. But I don't know, so that is likely extended, well, definitely extended the lifetime capacity of the landfill. But I'm not exactly sure where they're currently at in terms of capacity. Yes, you could reach out to them, or I believe could we reach out to them, I guess?
Well, I know that is one of the locations that, as they've done the waste audit, that we've had that going on, and we've done that in November. I don't think I've gotten the results back from that yet. That's more observational versus pulling out. The others are like 50 categories. But that is something that we expect to have some kind of results of what we saw at that location when we went there, and I think they're going to that more than once. That's kind of part of doing that waste audit.
Okay, so if they are taking in more recycling, so they're going to extend the life of that landfill using recycling as their reasoning, is what you're saying?
The way the state permits landfills is by airspace. So it's not based on a date. So I like to equate it to like buckets. They've got 5 buckets and they've got so much of that full. Once they fill up their buckets, they're done. But if you stop landfilling, if you start slowing down how quickly you fill those buckets up, then that just extends the life of the landfill. Similarly to what we're trying to do with municipal solid waste diversion is we're trying to divert material from the landfill to extend the life of the landfills that we do have. So yes, hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, so last question on this. So we're just looking at no plans in the near future that the city has to close that landfill and divert the waste somewhere else, whether it's recycling waste, I'm sorry, whether it's recycling, food recycling, household recycling, building materials, the landfill will still be open and functioning in the Bordeaux area in the near future.
So that landfill is, since it is privately owned and state permitted, Metro doesn't have any authority over that landfill.
I think to make the distinction on that one, though, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about that is a construction and demolition debris facility at that location. So it's not municipal solid waste. So that's one of the things too. So I will tell you that we are kind of resurfacing, like coming up with C&D legislation. I do know that there are 2 other facilities in that space. So when you're talking about coming up with that, it means that we're trying to make legislation where it doesn't direct it toward, landfilling in a municipal solid waste thing. So there's just, there's competition in that space is what I'm thinking. And so, not everything's gonna go to that location. And so, yes, it is diverting more materials, but we can find out the information and get it back to you about what their life expectancy is. That date's always kind of changing, and I know we rely a lot on the state when it comes to some of the private groups, and so we were kind of waiting for some of that information to get back. So, but again, it kind of goes back again to where I was talking about the compliance side and not getting that information when it comes to generators and the things that we're seeing. That's where we need more reinforcements in our space to kind of go and ask those questions, because we've had more questions, I think, since we started the waste audit of being in that space, and they're like, oh, we have to pay into that. So you're getting that kind of thing. So I do think as this evolves, we'll get more participation, one in the C&D space that you won't necessarily see it there. And then at least it kind of drops the veil so we see what's going on when you do a waste audit too. So we're finding out intel on those things.
Okay, so then that just piggybacks off of the second one, and then I'll let someone else have a turn. When you were saying C&D legislation that's coming up, could you just elaborate on that?
I can let Matt speak to that a little bit more, but it is a resurface of some of the things that we had before. But in other words, when you have someone in that space who is looking at, projects, plan reviews that are coming through the city, that at least they're identifying what percentage they're recycling and you're phasing in, that material, where's it going? Instead of going into a landfill, they have to identify that portion and it phases in through the years. But I'll let Matt kind of speak to it.
Yeah, certainly. So back in 2023, there was legislation at council that went through council, and there's a lot of community engagement with the Bordeaux community as well as the county in general to do 2 things, basically. One, have a scaling, basically a multi-year tiered plan of more and more C&D materials being required to go to C&D facilities. Then that's kind of from the developer side, where if you're building whatever, year 1, you have to make sure all of your concrete goes somewhere. Year 2, you have to make sure all of your shingles go to the right facilities, whatever. And so it scales up in the actual materials having to be diverted from the landfill and go to C&D facilities instead. And then the other side of that is us actually being able to review and look at and certify those facilities to be the only ones that can accept that material, so that we can make sure that that material that is highly recyclable and also not municipal solid waste goes to the right places and gets diverted from the landfill. So it's kind of a 2-piece thing. Back in 2023, we basically brought that exact legislation to council, did all the community engagement. There was some misunderstandings at the time as to what it was actually going to do and how that interacted with, not everybody understands the difference between construction and demolition material and municipal solid waste. They hear landfill and they think it's the same thing no matter what it is. Either way, it never actually went to a vote at council, or final vote at council, and it was withdrawn. And so we're working with that same sponsor, and currently we're in discussion with our legal team about bringing it back. And this time we're still a couple months away from it hitting council agendas whatsoever, but there will be there will be pretty hefty conversation with both industry pieces, both the development side of the industry as well as the disposal side of the industry as to how they respond and can manage those new requirements when they come online.
If no one else has anything to say.
We have a question from the audience. Oh,
Oh, hold on, we're not at public comment yet.
Okay,
We'll get
thank
there,
you.
though.
thank you.
People from TDEC here to do just an information session, and was showing us the length of time that we have for landfills in Middle Tennessee. And it was, I think at that time, it was either last year or the year before, it was like 5 to 7 years max for the life of the landfills. Has that changed, or are we still facing that kind of, wall coming toward us?
So the state's plan, their report, that's the last report that I've seen from the state in terms of life expectancy of our landfills. That 5 to 7 years, I will say, is for municipal solid waste, and that's for kind of this region. But we are seeing more and more that material is going out of state, quite a bit going to Kentucky. And a lot of that, and as we mentioned earlier and on this slide, is a lot of that construction and demolition material. So getting that C&D material out of Middle Point landfill is also, it's huge for their life expectancy because it's a lot of material. But that's the last I've heard from them. And I have heard that there is a West Camden, is that one, is expanding. So that will increase capacity as well, if that goes through, huh? Oh, and Cedar, yeah. So there's a couple landfills that are going for expansions as well. So that will help alleviate some of that to keep it in state.
Okay, it just seems like that's such an impending, I don't want to say doom, but it's just an impending thing, fact. We ought to be hearing more about that.
It seems like it's a moving number, and it depends on what, different events, like, again, wood waste, where we recycle it, but, you'll see an uptick in that. You'll see an uptick, even though we've done on the recycling side on, trying to get that moved to the right place, but you'll still see people that'll put it in the stream. Anytime there's, the disasters that occur, then that ends up seeing an uptick in what goes into the landfill just from those, just as an aside. Usually that's what happens in that waste space. But it seems like the state number is a moving number, and that's something, again, that where we're trying to lock in on what is actually happening at our transfer stations. That's what we're hoping to drill down to, and even ourselves on those numbers, because it's kind of like peeling the onion back and you're looking at all the different pieces to it. And I will say that there is a portion of municipal waste that's going to Kentucky, because as I said earlier, part of ours is going there. So even when we go about bidding for our disposal, we're going to be asking them all the places that our waste could potentially go, because wherever our waste goes, there goes our exposure. So that's just one of the things that we would be looking at, is for them to say all the potential places that our waste could go and as a disclosure as part of that bid process.
Yeah, and if I could as well, ultimately the state's numbers are there's a ton of variables there as far as the numbers are based on projections of like what is being sent there today that doesn't take into account like things like our C&D legislation that would divert a lot of material. It doesn't take into considerations increasing in recycling or composting efforts or other just major diversion efforts. It also, I don't think it considers sending material out of state or the current landfills getting expansions, or so that sort of stuff can change. It's just what it had at the time was what it was if everything stayed static except for the amount that's going to those places every year. So it definitely feels impending, but if things change, and as they are changing, it isn't. It's not a sure thing.
if I may add to that, I think I've been very outspoken about this issue on this board, but I also have shared many times, I think that it is a state-level issue, and there is some progress on that front. The governor has an advisory task force that is supposed to be reporting on sustainable solutions. And I think that we just, all of us that are informed need to keep the pressure at the state level. This is not a single county, single municipality issue. It's regional, it's statewide. I think Middle Tennessee has obviously the shortest lifespans left on our municipal waste landfills. And I think unfortunately, the state plan that you mentioned, there are a lot of variables. The biggest one is it doesn't consider growth. And when they're not going to consider population growth, then all of these other variables don't matter because diversion is not moving as quickly as growth. So we know that the problem is getting bigger, the lifespans are shorter than what they're saying, and that the Jackson Law is the biggest impediment to any expansion. Look at what's going on in Murfreesboro with Middle Point, right? They just had won an appeal where the city, the owner of the landfill, Republic, wanted to go vertical to expand, and the city was able to stop that on appeal. Now, is it appealed again? What happens next? I don't know. But there's certainly, as long as we're letting local elected officials stand in the way of regional decisions, we will not have expansions of landfills. And maybe that means we're sending more waste out of our state, and maybe people are okay with that. But I think when they see how it affects their pocketbook, every single one of us will hear that they're not okay with it. So anyway, I've been very outspoken about it before. I didn't plan on speaking to it again tonight, but I just think it needs to be said. The state plan is very inadequate in how it's measuring the lifespan of the landfills because they do not consider growth.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that. However, if the landfill is in your backyard, I think you feel differently about whether it stays there or if it moves on somewhere else. So you have to look at just everyone's situation, because some of us are within arm's reach of the landfills. So we would not agree with going vertical. Those communities would not. I do have other questions, though. Going back to the MMPS pilot program, you had just mentioned it was only for 6 months. Was that the plan, or did they end it sooner for some reason? And what are your plans going forward to maybe resuming that?
My apologies, it was only 6 months within the calendar year 2025, but it was for an entire school year. So it was one full year. It was grant funded, and we were not able to secure additional funding, and the schools were, some of the schools were able to pool some PTO money to be able to keep it going. But I do believe, so that was spearheaded by the mayor's office with our support. And I do believe that Metro Nashville Public Schools has incorporated that into this year's, or into fiscal year 27's budget for all schools. Whether or not that goes through or not, I'm not sure, but I've been working with their Mara Sullivan, who is part of their leadership, we've discussed composting as well as expanding the recycling programs in schools as well.
All right, I think I'm fine for now. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, we will move to public comment. So for anyone that wants to do a public comment, if you can come up to the table, turn on the microphone, and then you will have up to 5 minutes.
All right, thanks for allowing me to approach. Today I speak as a concerned citizen resident of this city and nation. My organization, which has been under consideration since 2011, is now furthering its approach, unfortunately pro bono. My organization advocates for progressive government processes that affect all citizens. Our strategic advice is that the solid waste removal be mandated to a bin system throughout the entire city. So we're talking about north, south, east, and west, with approximately probably 40 bins in each quadrant. With a pickup of mandating manufacturers of automobiles to take the vanity out of a regular automobile and making them mandate that all automobiles have pickup and they take their own trash to their bin. And this will ultimately just kind of divert the long, undesirable labor of picking up someone else's trash. It's an undesirable occupation. But it's also kind of easing the burden and just kind of moving on and moving forward to something else that needs to be taken care of. I don't know if this specific board or these employees, what your specific title is, or if you've even approached the automobile industry to kind of progressively just move forward and take the vanity out of it and be a functional machine versus just being something that looks good. I don't know if anyone has moved that pendulum forward, but it's something that I suggest. Overall, this nation is over-consumed with solid waste landfills. I don't care what the life of it is, it exists. The 2 points are, is there a mandate progress that's going forward to take the vanity out of an automobile and make it utilized as a machine that it is, and mandate that all automobiles have a pickup on it? I don't care if it's a car, a truck, a minivan, all of them have a pickup on the back of them where from 6 to 10 at night, they take their own trash to the bin. And then within 10 states or however many states that have residents in them, only 10 of them get landfilled and the rest of it gets completely combustioned and burnt to where it's not contaminating because North America was agriculture at one time. And now all it is a pilgrim's landfill. And I don't care what state you're in. That point, and then, is there any other progress? Because if you go to the website, there's nothing there. It just talks about what has been done, as far as picking up other people's trash. Okay, that's great. But what progressively is going forward to where this isn't a burden and, this undesirable labor no longer exists? To where it's just everybody living in a humane society and taking the vanity out of a machine and just taking care of something that you create. So I guess that's my biggest question and concern is whether there's going to be a legislation, political, corporate, I don't care what it is, but having landfills only in 10 states and the rest going completely just burnt because no one deals with, I don't care what the life of the landfill it is. From my research, I haven't seen that they do anything with plastic. It's like a one-use type of situation. So if you're not doing anything with it, it's been sitting there for 50 years, just why don't you just burn it from the beginning? So that's the two things. Automobiles are being completely mandated, taking the vanity out of the entire thing. And maybe introducing some kind of tax credit to make it more attractive. And then just completely getting rid of the entire landfill process and going to a bin system that just basically burns everything. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? Okay, I will send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Jen. Can we get a motion to approve the 2025 annual report?
I'll move we approve the report.
All right, do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion before we proceed? Hearing none. All in favor, by the sound of aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. The 2025 annual report and solid waste management plan is approved. All right, based upon that, can we get a request a motion to adjourn this meeting? Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Awesome, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville.